Joining us today is Durban-based businessman and BizNews tribe member Roy Tilley, who owns an industrial property in Queensmead. Now, Roy has raised the alarm over what he says is a deeply flawed municipal rate system, saying that the formula used to calculate rates is driving bills steadily higher and making them harder and harder for property owners and small businesses to absorb. Now, Roy, could you just unpack for us what you found?
Yeah, thanks, Patrick, for allowing me this opportunity to explain this to the rest of the South Africans out there, because basically what we got is a rates formula that's mathematically flawed. It affects all types of property, residential, commercial, and industrial. And what it boils down to is that it's a blank check for any municipality to take as much as they want from your building in terms of rates. And rates, unlike water or electricity, you can't switch it off. You can't say, right, I'm going to go to I had enough of the water. I'll go to the stream and boil some water, or I'll switch off my electricity and I'll get some candles. With rates, you can't escape it. So what they've got is a formula that ever increases the percentage that is applied to the actual value of the property. The percentage applied is mathematically infinite in terms of the current formula. And at every 4 years, what happens is they up the value of your property and take the bigger percentage of that new up property value. And that goes on every 4 years. But every year you keep getting a bigger percentage of it. And then after 4 years, you get a double whammy when the actual, they actually take another big chunk of it based on a bigger value. So the big problem is that it affects everybody, and it can turn your property that was maybe a positive cash flow type generator, if it was let out, or even your residence, which is now occupied by you, into a negative cash flow type setup, where you basically have a bond that you never ever can repay, in effect, and it just keeps going up and up and up until you can't pay it, and then the municipality comes along and says, right, we want your property.
And Roy, has there been any pushback from ratepayers?
Well, that there will be probably a protest movement, a protest in July by the eThekwini ratepayers protest movement. Basically, we need people to withhold their rates and not pay anything over. The money will be put in a trust account. This is the same organization that fought the case with the for ratepayers. And they have learned from that, and they've got a new plan to try and basically say, look, enough's enough. We need you guys to listen to us. We've got the money in a trust account. And, if you come to the party, then we can release the funds. One needs to put pressure on the municipality, because this municipality has mismanaged funds. And as we know, throughout the country, you've got a problem possibly with municipalities. But unfortunately, we have a particularly bad one here. I mean, they're famous for recently spending 22 million rand on a statue when people are, basically starving. So, but that's not really my issue. We know the municipalities have got a problem. But my major issue is it was a formula like this. It's just a blank check for any municipality to just keep on increasing the percentage they apply. So, that has to be stopped. We have to cap this. This has to go to Parliament. They have to amend the Municipal Properties Act of 2004. The one important thing too is, in our particular setup, we have lots of small little tenants, and we are like the incubator for small business. We have areas that are mostly under 100 square meters. And, that's another reason why we've got a defensive setup, because we can never lose one big tenant. But the reality is that, if this thing eventually closed down the road, all these small businesses would have no place to pick up or rent out a place under 100 square meters. So there's a lot of small businesses tied to these types of businesses. And ultimately, the staff suffer, because we've got guys been working for us for over 30 years, and now basically they're going to have to be on like short time because, we can't keep absorbing these ridiculous rate hits that the government is putting on us.
So, what avenues have you branched out to try and fight this? You say it comes from a 2004 law. How are you trying to fight this? Who have you reached out to?
Well, it's the Municipal Properties Act of 2004 that it doesn't seem to have a cap on the randage or the percentage applied to your property. There is some kind of a limit from 1 year to the next that they can increase your randage by, but there's no cap on the ultimate randage. So I have reached out to Action SA here and also the eThekwini Ratepayers protest movement. But the biggest problem that you have is that everybody initially doesn't see the real problem. They just say, oh, well, you've got a problem. You can object to your rates. But the objection process is only focused on the municipal value, which is deeply flawed. And that over time, based on their stupid formula, the connection between the property value and your rates goes way out. In fact, it has no relevance eventually. And in my particular model, if you compound the randage at 6% a year, and your rates will still go up regardless of if your property goes up. Your property doesn't even have to go up. And then if you want to stop the rates going up, you actually have to apply minus 21% to the value of your property every 4 years just to stop the rates going up. That's the absurdity of this particular formula.
So in essence, your property needs to devalue by 21% for those rates not to rise or to even just stabilize.
Yeah, to stabilize your rate book going forward, you need minus 21%. That's at a 6% compound of the randage. But if they compound it at 7 or 8% because they get more greedy and mismanage the funds more in these municipalities, then it'll be worse. You need more like minus 25, minus 26. It's a very simple Excel model that I built, but it's really been exposed in KZN now because we've got such a bad municipality. Because Johannesburg, they say, is not good, not run well, but it's run a lot better than KZN because the randage, say, on an industrial property is 2.5 cents in Johannesburg and 5 cents here.
And could you just explain randage in simpler terms?
Randage is just a fancy name for the percentage applied to the municipal value of your property. That's all randage is. So if they talk about 5 cents in the rand, it's 5% of the value of your municipal value of your property. 5% times your municipal value. And all other municipalities have a much lower sort of randage or percentage applied to them. But they're all going to have the same problem ultimately, because over time the compounding occurs and you'll creep up. Like, for example, in Durban, we had 1.5 cents in the rand, okay, on residential property. But over time, that'll creep up to 2.5, 3, because there's no limit on it. And eventually they'll be in the same position as people with industrial property. So we just happen to be on the front line here.
At what point, 2030, 2034, is this just completely unsustainable?
Yeah, it's a good question. I have modeled certain things, but it really comes down to what purpose you're using your building for. If it's a pure rental property and let's say you can even escalate your rents at 8.5%, then what might happen is you could stay around for a bit longer. If the economy turns down and the guys can't pay, you could be in trouble in a shorter time. It all depends on the economy, at what rate you can escalate your rents to try and cover up. That's what happens. It's not really sustainable at the moment, particularly for somebody who's actually got a building and it's not freehold. If it's not freehold, even if you're running a big business through your building, not necessarily renting it out to tenants and stuff, you could still have a major problem because the mortgage is going to be big, the rates are going to be big. You're going to be in a situation where you can't afford anything, and we'll end up with Durban industrial areas like Detroit.
And are you seeing any value coming from these high rates that you're paying?
Very good question, Patrick. And the answer is zero value, because we know in our industrial area, which is the Queensmead one, and if you have a look at the Phoenix Industrial and maybe even Westmead, you'll see similar problems. Your verges aren't necessarily cut. Your tar on your roads is not good. Got potholes, and you even have problem with sewage lines, where you call the guys to come and try and sort something out, and they just have one go at it and disappear, and it becomes your problem to sort out municipal things. So yeah, we're not getting any value for it at all. And another point that needs to be made is just the disparity. Like in 8 years, our property, for example, was upvalued 33%, but the rates because of the formula went up 115%. And this will just carry on as we go out further out along the chain. In time, you'll get even greater increase in the rates for a small increase in the value of the municipal value.
And so when you do bring this up with the municipality, when you do object, what kind of responses do you get?
Well, they've got a standard objection form, and that objection form only focuses on the municipal value of your property. So that's not even the issue. The municipal value of the property is not the problem. It's the formula that is applied to that municipal value. So it's like you must object, like you're like a boxer in a ring, and now you must have your hands tied behind your back and try and fight with your head. It's impossible. It's impossible to win on the objection, because you even might have a problem where the guy comes out because you've objected, and he looks at it and says, "Oh well, you know what? I think this value could be higher or something," and then he applies the formula to it, and now you end up paying even more. So you basically have no hope objecting, because the objection is not based on the Randage, it's not based on the formula, it's based purely on the municipal value.
And then you mentioned in your letter how the city sort of argued that financial consequences of the 2021 riots, floods, disasters that have happened in KZN, those have been factored into these higher rates. And you had an argument against that.
Well, first of all, yes, there's been trouble here, with floods and riots. And riots could have been controlled better, if the police had been allowed to do their job. But obviously, I think ultimately it was at the top of the government that sort of almost stopped the police doing their job here in KZN. So in some ways, then national government must, sort of actually put in some money into KZN. It shouldn't be up to just the KZN ratepayers to foot the bill for what happened there. It's a problem throughout where we're not getting the right service delivery. And I actually call this particular formula problem, I call it the RRM, the rates Randage Monster. And this thing will basically eat up all the equity in your property over time. And you must realize too that the municipality ranks first in terms of securing equity in your assets. So if the municipalities are at rates, they will get first dibs at the equity in the property before even the banks. So even the banking sector will be affected ultimately, where their equity is taken away by the rates.
Another argument you made in your letter is essentially how these municipalities become a shareholder in your property in a way. Could you just explain that?
Yeah, well, basically, they, by virtue of the fact that they're applying a percentage to the municipal value of your property, they become a shareholder in the value of your property. But first of all, they never paid for it. They never do any work for it. And they get a comfortable yield, particularly now on industrial property, they're getting 5%. If you were able to buy a property and rent it out and pay all your bills, you would be very happy to get 5% clean of your property after everything. And this is what these guys are getting. They're getting that without doing a damn thing.
And then obviously we've looked at this in the context of your industrial property, but how could this affect residential properties, maybe older property owners across the country?
Yeah, old people ultimately will be forced out of their homes because they won't be able. Won't have an income stream that grows. They'll be on a more or less fixed income from some pension or something. So ultimately, they won't be able to pay their rates. It'll just keep creeping up. And if they live long enough, their randage, their percentage applied to their property will grow, right up to some stupid level like where we are, 5%. But it could 3%. It could finish most of them off, where they can't afford to service their properties anymore, and then they're forced to sell at some stupid price. So the big thing here is that we have a freehold building. There's been a lot of work being done over the years to pay it off. Now, like most people who've got industrial property or any kind of even commercial, because they had 3 cents in the rand in the KZN. They are basically paying a bond that never goes away. It's a negative cash flow that never goes away, and it has no limit. So that's just crazy. The whole idea of being an investor or building something up for the future is that you build up the tree so the tree can produce the fruit for you. But now these guys are coming along and stealing all your fruit.
So as these rates compound, Roy, you've mentioned that you've had to pause bonuses on some of your staff. Obviously, I'm sure your tenants, their rents are going to increase. It seems completely untenable.
Yeah, it is untenable long term. Mathematically, you can't beat the eighth wonder of the world, according to Einstein, which is the power of compounding. You can't apply an ever-increasing percentage to a ever-increasing number. It eventually, no matter what you do with any property, you won't be able to service that. And we are at the front line here because, like I said before, this municipality has got the highest drainage in the country. And just to give you a good example, residential housing in KZN is at 1.5 cents. Okay, that's your randage, 1.5%. But in Cape Town, the industrial property is at like roughly 1.6 cents. So there's such a difference. So you got 1.6 cents for industrial property in Cape Town, but 2.5 for Joburg, and 5 cents for Durban. And Durban is not the industrial heartland of the country. Johannesburg is. But why is Durban paying double than Johannesburg? This is insane.
And so when you raised this alarm, you reached out to Rob Hersov specifically, and as well as Helen Ziller. Have you gotten any response back from those avenues?
I sent a message to Helen Ziller. I never got anything back from her. I spoke to one of the DA guys. I have to briefly Hanif Russim, the DA guy, but he hasn't seen the urgency of this yet. I have been speaking to Bruce Taylor of Action SA, and he has seen it, and we're trying to set up a meeting with her. Alan Beasley of the Action SA to also take this further up the chain, because we basically need to put a cap on the percentage. Like I said, once you put a cap on a percentage, you can survive the thing, and then it becomes much fairer, because if the property goes up after that by 30% or something, then your rates will go up 30%. That's fair, but you can't have your property going up 30%, your rates going up 115.
And so what do you see as the remedy to this?
The remedy is an amendment of the Municipal Properties Act of 2004. We need to put a cap on the maximum percentage that can be applied to any property. We are currently at 5% or 5 cents in the rand on industrial property from July. Now, that's already too high. I would like that capped at 3 cents in the rand. And then every 4 years, they can get 3% of the new up value of the property. But they can't, once it's hit, say, 3%, they can't keep getting extra money every single year. And that's what they do. Because they can't run their budget properly, they go for the easiest target, which is a ratepayer. Because, as I mentioned earlier, you cannot switch this off. You can't escape it like a partner, slowly crushing you. You can't stop the rates. No service is given by rates. It's not water and electricity. So what do? You just slowly bleed to death while they get fatter.
Roy Tilley, an industrial property owner in Durban, and I'm Patrick Kidd for biznews.com.